Trump and DHS tell Somali refugees to get out by March 17th. Let's check it out. Hey, welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. Mass protests and fury over the death of Renee Good in Minneapolis. Maniac lefties directing their rage at ICE. Some of the video that we have seen today, assaulting, screaming. It's getting uglier and uglier in the wake of this. Not much is going to change, to their disappointment. Trump and Homeland Security not moving an inch on immigration. 1,000 more ICE agents are now heading to Minneapolis, and the administration ramming no-nonsense immigration policies right back at Democrats who are enraged on television all day long. Announcing temporary protected status for Somali refugees has ended today, meaning refugees that haven't been granted permanent status must leave this country by March 17th, or ICE is going to be coming to their door and deporting them back home. Now, only a few thousand Somalis in this country have this temporary protected status at this point, but it's more about the message that this sends, that America will no longer allow its refugee laws to be abused by foreign grifters demanding that Americans adopt them and then pay for them for the rest of their lives. More than 80% of Somalians in our country are on some kind of welfare. It is a story that enrages the president. He spoke about it today at length.
If you're on public assistance, like almost all Somalis are, did you see where 94% of them are on public assistance? You can't wire money out of the country back to your bank account from where you came. You know, they came from a place with nothing, and they come here and they drive around in Mercedes-Benz. It angers me so much, but we're going to straighten out our country. Think of that Ilan Omar. She lives in Somalia. They don't have a government, they don't have a military, they don't have police, they don't have anything. And she comes here and she tells us about our Constitution. I have a constitutional right to rip off the country. I guess she's a total scam artist.
Now, all of this, of course, will further enrage Democrats whose fury over Trump's audacity to implement immigration laws in this country was further ignited after the death of Renee Good, attempting to flee arrest and accelerating her SUV directly at an officer standing in front of her hood. Last night, Jon Stewart became the latest mainstream media host to outright lie about what happened last Wednesday.
I see a woman, maybe naive, sitting in a car thinking she has to do something and she's going to block something, and a wildly extreme overreaction to that small act of defiance.
John, the small act of defiance was blocking ICE, and that's more of a medium-sized act of defiance, if we're really going to be honest. The reaction to that act of defiance was to arrest Renee Good, which was about to happen as officers demanded that she get out of her SUV, something we all saw because video of this event was taken from about 50 different angles. That was the defiance, and that was the reaction. But everything changed when she attempted to flee and drove straight into an officer standing right in front of her SUV. Their resistance to telling the truth on this story is fully intentional. They have to lie to make the story more sympathetic to their cause, which, of course, is the decimation of our immigration laws. Renee Good was just a pawn that they're using in that process. Forcing Americans to support the end of American sovereignty and immigration law is no easy task, of course. Remember, the Democrat Party sounded like this until very recently.
Tolerate immigration by people whose first act is to break the law as they enter our country. We must continue to do everything we can to strengthen our borders. Whether they're innocent or guilty of the crimes they're charged with in court, they're still here illegally, and they should be sent out of the country.
We all agree on the need to better secure the border. We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States.
Democrats support also enforcing laws, current laws, against those who came here illegally. Democrats have long called for strong border security.
Strong border security and deportations. These are not ancient clips. Obama was the president right before Donald Trump. Clinton was the previous Democrat before Obama. Pelosi is still in Congress. When will Democrat voters wake up and realize that their party has completely sold them out? They're pretending that it's virtuous to dump the third world into our country and guilting their voters into going along with it. And those are the people that are screaming and going ballistic on ICE agents. Those are the most gullible, most extreme, most psychotic ones, I should say. Their true motives are vile and sinister, though. It's the decimation of the country as you know it, and it's voter replacement to get there. That's why they need so many from the third world to come in. It is a quick method to socialize your country and expand the government so it has nearly full control of our economy and access to the bulk of the wealth created. Washington is a malignant tumor. It wants to grow and grow and grow and have more and more to fuel it. It needs money. It needs our wealth. The more of our economy, the more of everything that this country makes that Washington has control of, the better it is for Washington. America is being hijacked by the radical left, and brain-dead Democrat voters are going along for the ride, and the most psychotic of them are getting violent over it. Would they have shown this kind of violence to DHS under Obama? I doubt it. What changed? Nothing changed. Open borders means wages go down and the cost of everything goes up, which is something that nobody really talks about in all this equation. It's why it's so infuriating to watch Democrats complain about the cost of living, as they're doing every single day now. Because all they want to do is decimate your ability to pay for your life, the cost of living in your life, in any way that they can. Every plan that they have makes the cost of living for you go up. It is so disingenuous. If you really want affordability, actually, ICE is one of the only government agencies that can bring it to you. For the first time in years, rents are dropping thanks to deportations. In 14 of the top 20 metro areas with the largest illegal migrant populations, home list prices declined year over year back in December. The 3 metro areas that saw modest price increases for homes are the sanctuary cities, where the illegals are protected. That's where prices are still going up and life is getting even more unaffordable. But in places where deportations can happen, I mean, think about it. You're taking the bottom of real estate, you're opening that up. That removes all the upward pressure on price. It's as simple as that. You want it to be affordable? Let ICE do the job. It's all a scam. And most of the outrage designed to make you believe that you should be angry over the implementation of our immigration laws. Most of that outrage is totally manufactured, as Scott Bessent explains.
When you see these protesters, someone is financing them. There are safe houses that when you see the 300 people with the same laser that they're using to blind DHS agents in courthouses in Portland, someone bought those lasers. And again, what we do is follow the money, just like we followed it with the mafia, just like we follow it with the drug cartels. And we will find out who's done this.
It's all just a massive psyop that we're living through. Again, think about how Obama talked about immigration, how they implemented immigration just before Trump came into power. Think about how they all spoke about this issue. This is all fake, every bit of it, engineered by the American Marxist left. It's actually a brilliant scam, to their credit, but it is pure evil in nature, designed to make Americans vote for the destruction of their own country. The behavior that you're seeing in videos like this, these are Americans that are set on the idea of just decimating this country in every possible way. And it's a lot more than just those are the violent ones. Those are the crazy ones. Millions and millions of people will vote for this in the next election. The decimation of their country. Here's a little clip for the furious left-wing protesters out there, and just a reminder of how this psyop has worked so quickly. We're going to play Obama's press secretary in 2016. This is just months before Donald Trump took office on the issue of immigration and how it's being handled under the Obama administration.
The Department of Homeland Security and ICE have begun removal operations. I think what they're calling it, others are calling it raids. The Los Angeles Times quoted a woman saying that her family in Georgia, ICE agents came in, looked room to room, woke up her own kids. They were shaking with fear. Wondering if the administration can confirm that those operations have begun.
David, for individual operations, I'd refer you to the Department of Homeland Security. What I can tell you is that the Department of Homeland Security has prioritized the cases of recent arrivals.
That's the answer. And that's all the more rage you saw on the story. Senator Markwayne Mullin joins us now. That's quite a soundbite there, from, 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago. Absolutely zero protests as the Obama administration raided the homes of illegal immigrants in this country and rounded them up like cattle. Isn't that something?
Well, listen, this has nothing to do with actually deportation. This has to do with anti-Trump. It's anything that Trump decides to do is bad. And they think it's a political win to go against him because there's 20%, 30% of their base hates President Trump, and no matter what happens there. So they're fighting for the primary because so many of these elections nowadays are won in primary elections that they don't want to be challenged from their left. And so they're pandering over and over to these people, regardless if it's good for America or if it's bad for America. And when we aren't enforcing our nation's laws, Rob, when we are picking and choosing which laws we're going to enforce and which laws we don't, you end up being a lawless nation, which is what we had 4 years underneath the Biden administration. And President Trump is restoring the law and order back to these even blue cities. And the people that live there, except the ones that are being paid to protest, are actually excited about what's happening because they're getting their streets and they're getting their town back.
Yeah, I do wonder what the actual numbers are on the approval of these operations. I mean, I know that I do think that the media does a great job of guilting Democrat Party voters into believing that this is too far. And you're seeing now calls to defund ICE are now coming from the mainstream in the Democrat Party. Axios reporting the idea is proliferating even among the more moderate and establishment wings of the party. So, I mean, it's the media game on this and the guilt game on this has been very effective in making people, I guess, distrust their own common sense, what they actually believe a sovereign nation should do, which is, have immigration policy.
Yeah, but think about this. If we defund Department of Homeland Security, they do a lot more than arrest illegals. I mean, you walk through the airport, they're providing security. If you look at what's happening internationally, Department of Homeland Security doesn't just do a forward approach at our borders, they do a forward approach in other parts of the country. Department of Homeland Security is there for a reason because they can protect us from home and abroad threats around the United States and across the world. So when they say defund DHS, are they saying they want to defund our security threats and that we are actively fighting against with terrorism? Because, our federal agents, they're simply enforcing the laws, by the way, that Democrats helped pass. They're enforcing these same laws. If the Democrats didn't like our immigration policy, they could have changed it underneath Biden. I mean, Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the House. Chuck Schumer was in charge of the Senate. And by the way, Biden was in the White House. They didn't propose one single immigration policy other than open our borders wide open and allow Venezuela to empty their prisons into our country. That was their immigration policy. The reason why they lost so much a Hispanic vote that went to President Trump is because even those that are here legally, that went through the naturalization process, they want the nation's laws to be enforced because why? They left a lawless country and wanted to chase the American dream, and they see that remnants of what they left behind starting to flood our own streets. And so when the Democrats aren't wanting to force our nation's laws, Rob, I scratch my head and go, what are you fighting for? Do you not believe in the American dream anymore? Do you really want to put us into one of those countries that these people left? Yeah. And then why is it okay, Rob, that these people that are protesting on the streets are flying the flag of the country they left? And I don't mean to sound cliche here, but if that country was so great, then why are you in the U.S.? Go back to where you came from.
Yeah, we've certainly allowed a really dangerous ideology into this country. We've allowed something that we've never seen in this country enter into this country, and it shows its face at these protests, and a lot of the people that you see making a lot of noise right now. It's very scary, I think, to the average American.
Right.
Senator, good to see you. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Markwayne Mullin.
Rob, thanks for having me on.
Good to see you. Larry Elder joins us now. The White House, Larry, ending temporary protected status for Somalian refugees. I think it's, it might only be mostly symbolic. There's only a few thousand that still have that status. A lot of them have already become citizens, but it certainly sends a message, does it not?
It really does. And this scandal is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now there's something like 1,000 state employees across various agencies in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, that are coming forward and saying, we tried to alert Governor Tim Walz. We tried to alert the Attorney General, Keith Ellison. They either ignored us or they threatened us against retaliation. So this is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It may end up even being larger than $9 billion. On the issue, though, of deportations, I'm old enough to remember, Rob, when Barack Obama was referred to as deporter-in-chief. Yep. Luis Gutierrez did his big presentation on the floor of the House and put out his numbers, and so they were bigger numbers than George W. Bush, bigger numbers than Bill Clinton. And while he criticized it, nobody called Barack Obama a fascist or a Nazi. And if you want to eliminate some of this, allow ICE and federal officials to go to the jails and the prisons so they don't have to go out into the streets and perform these operations.
The calculation at some point for the Democrat Party changed from let's take care of Americans, let's get wages up, let's build a strong Democrat Party. It changed to let's gut the place. Let's figure out a way to, I think, turn the country socialist. And the fastest way they could think to do that was just importing a whole hell of a lot of people, destabilizing everything. And then again, once you socialize this country, think about the access to wealth the government would have. If they had control of the larger economy in this country, which is $20-30 trillion instead of just $7 trillion that we send in taxes. Think about how starved the government is for that. And one more thing before I let you go, I want to talk about, because all this started with Minneapolis and Minnesota and the fraud story, right? California, they're about to get ready to look at as well. And we wanted to show you, we did some math this morning. 2010, the state budget in California was about $117, maybe $125 billion, somewhere in that range. By 2025, 15 years later, it's at $320 billion. Your population only went up from 37 to 39 million people. You've added no great services, and the quality of life is dramatically worse. Where the hell does $200 billion a year go, Larry?
You know, when I ran for governor, I got a primer on the budget. A bunch of experts, including people like Steve Forbes, Art Laffer, weighed in. And after I had my seminar, I said, this isn't a budget. This is a crime scene. All this money, unaccounted for COVID, unaccounted for homelessness. I believe when all is said and done, it's going to make the Minnesota fraud look like a starter kit.
It's amazing, isn't it? Larry Elder, good to see you. Thanks so much. All right, the president visits Ford in Michigan, touting his economy. We've got a debate here on an interesting part of his plan, which is capping credit card interest rates. It's something that's got both sides talking. We're going to debate it coming up next.
The results are in, and the Trump economic boom is officially begun.
Your data is like a single domino. The moment it's stolen, it starts a chain reaction that puts the information that guards your assets at risk. 1 in 3 Americans have been a victim of identity theft. Are you willing to risk it?
When I saw zeros on that screen as my bank account balance, I went to immediate panic.
$21,000 just gone. I opened my account and $30,000 is missing. Like $30,000. I have no idea what to do.
If your personal information is stolen, are you prepared to pick up the pieces alone? LifeLock is the leader in identity theft protection and restoration.
Once LifeLock got involved, everything changed.
With LifeLock, if your identity is stolen, they'll step in and fix it so you don't have to, guaranteed. Our highly trained U.S.-based restoration specialists contact institutions, dispute fraudulent charges, close compromised accounts, and even procure legal support far beyond the capabilities of your bank or credit card company.
LifeLock pursued this case further than I ever would have imagined.
If you call right now, you'll get LifeLock for just $9.99 a month for your first year. And as extra protection, all LifeLock memberships include the $1 Million Protection Package. Our members receive reimbursement for stolen funds and personal expenses, like lost wages, as well as coverage for lawyers and experts up to $3 million in total.
When the bank refused to reimburse my stolen money, the $1 Million Protection Package came through for me.
Our restoration guarantee and $1 Million Protection Package are included in all memberships with no additional fees.
I think it's natural to think that you can do this on your own. You can't. You need an expert in your corner.
Call 1-800-360-9220. and use promo code TV35 or go to lifelock.com/TV35 to join today.
WSOP presents the NFL Poker Experience. Rep your team. Compete in exciting NFL tournaments and win exclusive NFL Poker Championship rings. Download the WSOP free-to-play app for a chance to win $1,000 towards your favorite team merchandise.
Welcome back. The president touring a Ford factory in Detroit this afternoon, giving a big speech at the Detroit Economic Club. The president, the White House have become laser focused on the economy and affordability in the last couple of months. They're refusing to let Democrats seize politically on the crisis that they themselves created during the Biden administration, which is something that we're watching them try to do. It's something that infuriates the president, should infuriate you as well, as the American people, as we've seen what's happened with inflation in this country and the cost of everything, the quality of life that comes with it. The president declaring that MAGAnomics is working after just a little under a year in office, and highlighting how wrong the experts have been on tariffs, especially as the Atlanta Fed is now forecasting a sizzling 5.4% GDP growth for the fourth quarter of 2025, an insane number. And inflation came in this morning at 2.7%. So that is moving down further. Still needs to go a bit of ways down, but it's on a good path. Some noteworthy price drops over the last year. Eggs down 21%, butter and gas down 3%, tomatoes down 3%. The president today said this.
The results are in, and the Trump economic boom is officially begun.
All right, so the president's saying that. Trump making a big populist move that could actually be somewhat risky, though. We're going to talk about here in a second. One aimed at credit card companies at a time when Americans hold a record more than $1 trillion in credit card debt. Saying effective January 2026, I, as President of the United States, am calling for a one-year cap on credit card interest rates at 10%. A lot of people are paying 30% in the interest on their credit card debt. We're going to debate this idea. Steve Moore is a former economic advisor to the president, co-founder of Unleash Prosperity. Peter St. Onge is a senior economist at the Heritage Foundation. Two very intelligent men. Good to have you both here. Peter, I want to start with you. You like this idea on capping credit card rates at 10%. Tell us why.
One of the biggest challenges for low-income Americans is, of course, debt. This is something that's really exploded since the 1970s. Debt has exploded across the board, corporate debt, government debt, but it's really causing a lot of trouble for low-income Americans. So the debt-to-income ratio has gone from 40% in the 70s to over 100% now. You're seeing people putting groceries on the credit card. And of course, the problem is that credit card rates are currently bouncing around 21, 22%. So this is effectively debt slavery. Once these people get into debt, they cannot get out of it. So the idea of putting a ceiling on credit card rates, that's come from the left, it's come from the populist right. Bernie Sanders had been championing it. And what Trump's really trying to do here is to get after the affordability. You know, as you mentioned, inflation is coming down, but the problem is that Americans don't just want inflation to be slow. They actually want prices to come down, and a huge part of that is debt costs.
Now, Steve, there's a lot of people arguing on the other side of this and the potential negatives of an idea like this. What do you say?
Yeah, I'm in that camp. And look, Peter is right. We have way too much debt in this country, no question about it. But look, the first rule of economics, as you all know, is that the government should never impose wage and price controls. That's Economics 100. And of course, the second rule of economics is politicians always forget that rule. But look, what we've seen over the last 30 years or so is a democratization of credit. In other words, 35 years ago, low income and even lower middle income people didn't have access to credit cards. And so they were really credit restricted. And now, I mean, Peter is right. People use credit cards for everything. And if you put these price controls on, what's going to happen is lower income people will not have access to credit. In other words, the people who will not have access to the cards are people with the lowest credit scores. And I'm not so sure how that helps them.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We certainly have a debt problem. And Peter, I just want to read you a quote that I saw today from Ronald Reagan's former OMB director in his first term. The very idea of government intervention in the credit market is a stupid attempt to address the real affordability problem in the country that is caused by massive deficits and endless money printing at the Fed, which is something that, you know, the Trump administration doesn't seem to want to stop doing, which is, I think, an argument that a lot of people that I know that love Trump, that work on Wall Street, say we're addicted to debt, we're addicted to spending, and nobody wants to stop doing it. Your reaction to that, Peter?
Amen. You know, in Trump's first term, every single budget that he came out with, which I believe Steve was involved with, tried to make huge cuts. And every single time Congress walked away. Now, I think in the second term, Trump has tried to prioritize his relationship with Congress, and so he hasn't gone after them on spending. But unfortunately, despite DOGE, despite all those Republicans getting up and giving the applause, they have not cut spending meaningfully. There were some small cuts. And of course, Democrats are never going to cut spending. No. And what we're seeing now with the Fed is that there's very little attempt from Trump to try to get the Fed to tighten money and to rate in the monetary contribution to prices, which is really the overwhelming share of it.
Steve, if this is just a one-year thing, if he says we're going to do this for 1 year, I'm going to ask you to cap at 10%. I imagine the credit companies will be just fine. They're not going to go belly up. And would that maybe make it possible to just give people a year to try and climb out? You got 1 year. Try to get out of it as fast as you can. And maybe it would limit the negative effect. You said the downside would be that lower income people wouldn't be able to get credit. If it's only 1 year, is there a chance that this is possibly a good idea?
No, it's a bad idea. Look, as I said, you know, you don't want the government to ever set prices. Yeah. This is the essence of a free market economy. But I will say this. I mean, I completely agree with Peter that the worst way to borrow is to borrow on your credit card, because the credit card companies will charge you 15, 20, 25% interest rate. So don't do it. Don't borrow. You know, you're better off taking a loan out from a bank. They're not going to charge you 15 or 20% interest. So this is a real. Now, a lot of people are in dire financial straits and it's low income, and they don't have any other choice but to borrow on their credit card. But it's not you're going to get charged for the wahoo if you're going to borrow on your credit card.
So just to finish it off, Peter, you say that potentially it's not a bad idea. Try 10% for a year. Maybe it helps people get out.
Yeah, well, doing it for 1 year is going to mitigate how many cards they're going to cancel. So, you know, that makes it more likely that the credit card companies are just going to eat the margins. But, you know, fundamentally, it's kind of an argument similar to drug legalization. So, you know, in the abstract, let people do it, but
it'll be very, very popular with the American people, especially anybody that's got credit cards.
Let me just say one quick thing on the exit.
Real quick.
I'm confused. How are low-income people better off not having a credit card at all? I don't get that logic.
Yeah, that's the other side of it. I got to leave it right there, guys. We're going to leave it there. Peter St. Onge and Steve Moore, good to see you both. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Media reports indicate Trump is frustrated by the inaction of the DOJ and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. House Oversight Chairman James Comer is frustrated with her as well. And the lack of arrests, he says, is the greatest complaint that he hears on Capitol Hill. He's up next.
Mike Hammond here, founder of Signal Relief. Meet Dr. Beth Dupree, breast cancer surgeon for over 35 years.
In my surgical career, I have treated thousands of patients, and finding effective pain relief has always been a priority. Believe me, I was skeptical, but Signal Relief caught my attention because it actually works. Clinical trials show over 85% of participants felt relief within 72 hours, with nearly half noticing a significant difference in just 15 minutes. Just place it near or above wherever you have the pain, whether it's your back, your shoulder, your neck, or your knee. Signal Relief Patch brings proven relief. I recommend it to my patients, family, and friends, and I get to witness and experience their pain relief firsthand, and that brings a smile to my face.
Join the hundreds of thousands who have experienced relief with the Signal Relief Patch, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Trust Dr. Dupree and me. The patch works.
I really love Balance of Nature.
There's so many vegetables and so many fruits.
I love everything about it.
It's just such a phenomenal product. So, got to keep doing it.
Lock in 50% off for 1 year.
The poverty is unimaginable.
There are people who are struggling.
This is where she washes the dishes.
If you're ever going to allow your Christian faith to rise and to do something for God's chosen people, now is the time.
This is the home of Galena. She's 96 years old.
This is what she had to eat for today.
She has one pot with water and wheat.
My father was killed by the Nazis, and I was an orphan. I didn't know about God. But now, in the cold, hungry nights, I pray for food to the God I've never known. There are good people that love you.
You'll see the tears. Scripture says joy can come in the morning, and you can be the reason.
If you will bless these hurting children of Israel, you will receive God's blessing in return. Your urgent gift today of $25 will help rush a survival food box filled with life-saving essentials. If you call right now, your gift's impact will be doubled to help save lives. Call, scan, or go online now.
I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I don't know how much longer she could have waited for us to come.
I can't even grow my food anymore. What will happen to me? I'm doomed to starve.
Tens of thousands of elderly Holocaust survivors in the former Soviet Union are living in extreme poverty, hungry, and forgotten. But through the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, we can bring them hope.
Eggs. It's my favorite food. May you be blessed.
You say to them, we see you and we're here to help.
If you call right now, your gift's impact will be doubled to help save lives.
I've been disappointed in some of the criminal referrals that are collecting dust on Attorney General Bondi's desk.
Has the Justice Department done enough?
Well, I would like to see more. That's the biggest complaint of every Republican on the House Oversight Committee is there haven't been enough arrests.
So someone from the Justice Department has not picked up the ball yet?
It appears that way.
Okay, well, that must be frustrating.
Very frustrating.
All right, the House Oversight Chairman James Comer there saying what many in Trump's base, many conservatives in this country are thinking, where's the action? Criminal referrals his committee sent to the DOJ, he says, have been collecting dust on Pam Bondi's desk, that the lack of arrests is the largest complaint that he hears. Now, the Biden DOJ was hyper-aggressive, right, toward the president, his political allies, his supporters. The Trump DOJ has very little interest in perhaps righting that wrong. This chart is everywhere online, you see here. It makes it very clear, no arrests or accountability for a lot of major scandals, Russia collusion, Mar-a-Lago raid, Jeffrey Epstein, the Doge fraud findings, COVID, just to name a few. There's a lot of bad people in the last administration and attached to the previous administration, the Democrat Party. And it appears the president is frustrated as well. Wall Street Journal reporting the president has complained to aides recent weeks, about Attorney General Pam Bondi, describing her as weak and ineffective enforcer of his agenda. Adding Trump has talked with allies about how he could appoint special counsels to the Justice Department because he's so frustrated with what he sees as the slow progress of its work. The House Oversight Chairman, Congressman James Comer, joins us now. And, sir, it's good to have you back on. Can you name the most egregious actions that you think the DOJ is sleeping on here?
Well, first of all, we worked very hard to investigate Dr. Fauci. We proved where he lied to Congress. That obviously is a felony. We gave criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. Now, this was when Merrick Garland was there, but the statute of limitations is 5 years. So all of our criminal referrals are still ready to be picked up and run with. Obviously, the Biden investigation, we spent a lot of time on that. We proved where the Bidens lied about the money they got from China. We subpoenaed the bank records, which is very difficult to get the bank records of a sitting president of the United States and their family. But we did that. We proved we followed the money without a shadow of a doubt that came from China. And thus far, there's been no action on those criminal referrals. And there are other investigations. We did the AutoPen investigation and proved without a doubt that Joe Biden was never in the room. He was never had meetings on his schedules. He never met with anyone. No one ever saw him authorize those pardons. That was a months-long investigation where we brought in people for depositions all during the summer, and when the government was shut down, we were still working on that, and yet the pardons haven't been officially declared null and void yet. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're now focused on Minnesota fraud.
Yeah, well, and that's I love that that's the focus now. As far as, you know, and speaking of pardons, I mean, Fauci got a pardon, Hunter Biden got a pardon, and I imagine, I mean, that's probably why I would assume no action was taken against Tony Fauci, who I think deserved to get hammered for what he did to the country. He got a pardon, which shows you exactly what they thought he committed a crime if he was pardoned.
Right.
So I guess that explains that one away. But as far as the pardons go, Joe Biden's still alive. You know, if he, I mean, how do you enforce? How do you go after him if he's just going to say, no, I knew about all these pardons? I mean, how do you renege those pardons? Wouldn't that be tough?
Well, look, again, there's no evidence, no one we brought in. We brought in the top people in the Biden administration. None of them ever communicated with Joe Biden. They were just taking the word from someone else. There was never any meetings where he discussed these pardons. And at the end of the day, you're really not supposed to use an AutoPen for a legal document. So there's so many instances where I think there would be great success in court because of our investigation, where you could get those pardons declared null and void, and that's the January 6th committee.
What about
that's the Biden family?
Yeah. What about people like John Brennan, Clapper, and then I was thinking Alejandro Mayorkas. Lied under oath, dumped, I mean, just crushed the sovereignty of this country and dumped millions of people into the country. That's a prosecution I think is much warranted.
Yeah, we impeached Mayorkas in the House, but the Senate just pulled their nose up in the air and didn't even have a trial. So I was very disappointed in the Republican senators. I'm not going to blame that one on the Trump Department of Justice, but I feel like the Republican senators let us down in that one.
Yeah. I want to talk about Epstein for a second. You're planning to move to hold Bill and Hillary in contempt of Congress. Bill didn't show up today to be deposed. Hillary's supposed to be tomorrow. It sounds like she's not going to show up. They wrote you a letter claiming every person has to decide when they have seen or had enough and they're ready to fight for this country, its principles, and its people, no matter the consequences. For us, now is that time. The letter goes on, but you know they're essentially saying that Republicans are destroying the country, and that's why we're not going to come in and be deposed. What's your reaction to that?
Only Bill Clinton could try to declare that he's the victim in the Epstein investigation. I mean, give me a break. Look, that subpoena was voted on by Democrats and Republicans. That was a bipartisan subpoena. Every Democrat in the committee voted to subpoena Bill Clinton. So he can't say it's a partisan investigation. Bill Clinton had Jeffrey Epstein to the White House 17 times when he was president. And post-presidency, Bill Clinton flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane 27 times. Yeah. So it's not like they didn't have a relationship with each other. Obviously, they knew each other very well, and we just have some questions.
Real quick, I got 5 seconds. What's the grade that you give the Trump DOJ and Pam Bondi on Epstein?
Well, that's been a public relations disaster. I hope that they will hurry up and turn the documents over. Congress has made it very clear we want those documents. And look, from what I've seen, Trump has no liability, so I really don't understand what's taking so long, but hopefully we'll get the documents and we can wrap this investigation up. If Bill Clinton does not show up, which he didn't, we're going to hold him in contempt of Congress.
Contempt of Congress for Bill Clinton. Chairman Comer, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The Iranian Islamic regime is murdering at least hundreds of its own people to try and hold on to power. The president's red line has clearly been crossed. What comes next?
We will take very strong action. If they do such a thing, we will take very strong action.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. How is your family woven into 250 years of U.S. history? Find out now at Ancestry.
If you contracted COVID and you're experiencing unexplained health symptoms, they may be related to the virus or the advice provided to safeguard us. Here's Dr. Peter McCullough, medical specialist and world-leading authority on pandemic illnesses.
Countless people, and possibly you, still suffer with unexplained symptoms they didn't have before the pandemic. Studies show it may be the COVID spike protein left inside you that can harm your brain and body for years. If you experience fatigue, sleep problems, shortness of breath, headaches, lightheadedness, and more, you should consider Ultimate Spike Detox. This clinical-grade natural detoxifier may actually break down the dangerous spike protein hiding inside you, and for the first time, it's available outside of clinical settings. Ultimate Spike Detox is how you get serious about getting back to good health.
Order online in minutes and save 15%. Visit tryspikedetox.com/save15, promo code SAVE15 at tryspikedetox.com/save15.
Life with ear ringing sounded like a constant train whistle I couldn't escape. Then I started taking lipoflavonoid. With 60 years of clinical experience, it's the #1 doctor-recommended brand for ear ringing, and now I'm finally free. Take back control with lipoflavonoid.
Do you care where the economy is headed? What about elections? Or climate change? See the forecast consensus on our future at IBKR Forecast Trader. If you disagree, you can buy the contract that looks undervalued. But be careful. You must be right more than 50.5% of the time to win. Go to IBKR Forecast Trader.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Do you know which investment has outperformed almost every other asset class since the beginning of last year? And that Goldman Sachs research is now forecasting to reach further heights. That's right, it's gold. Central banks around the world continue to buy gold at record levels due to economic turmoil, foreign conflicts, and a weakening U.S. economy plagued by debt. If you're concerned how to protect yourself as our financial system weakens, our team at Swiss America has a solution. For over 40 years, we've helped people just like you purchase precious metals for home delivery and for your IRAs. Don't miss out before this next big price jump. Call or text Swiss America at the number on your screen to receive your free portfolio review and a copy of The Timeless Truth About Gold and Silver. Let us show you how easy it is to safeguard your money. Call or text Swiss America today.
All right, welcome back. Trump administration tonight telling Americans to get out of Iran any way possible. That warning just coming down. Get out. As the president has a new warning for the Islamic regime as it murders hundreds, maybe thousands of its own citizens for rising up. Take a listen.
Now we're hearing that they're going to start hanging protesters tomorrow. So it comes back to the question, have they crossed your red line?
We will take very strong action. If they do such a thing, we will take very strong action.
And this strong action you're talking about, what's the end game?
The end game is to win. I like winning.
How do you define that in Iran?
Well, let's define it in Venezuela. Let's define it with al-Baghdadi. He was wiped out. Let's define it with Soleimani. And let's define it in Iran, where he wiped out their Iran nuclear threat. We don't want to see what's happening in Iran happen. And, you know, if they want to have protests, that's one thing. When they start killing thousands of people, and now you're telling me about hanging, we'll see how that works out for them. It's not going to work out good.
That's an interview earlier from today that just aired tonight. Diplomacy now does seem to be off the table for the president. Iranian protesters being murdered in the streets. The number of deaths uncertain. Reports indicate at least 538 have been murdered by the regime in the last couple of weeks. Trump has now been briefed on a wide array of military and covert tools. Iran's strategy also heavily discussed at the White House, led by J.D. Vance. KT McFarland is former Deputy National Security Advisor in Trump's first term and joins us now. KT, I think it's pretty obvious that Iran is crossing the red line, has crossed the red line. What do you think is going to happen here in the coming days?
Okay, so what they presented him with is a series of options, and there's usually like small, medium, and large options. The small option would be things like maybe a cyber attack or making sure that Starlink is there, that the Iranians can talk to each other since the regime has shut it down. The extreme option would be toppling the regime, getting rid of the mullahs, maybe bombing a lot of military installations. I don't think Trump wants either one of those. I think he goes for a middle option, which is he wants the killing to stop. He knows that he doesn't want to, I break it, I own it with Iran. And they're the big player in all this. It's not even the mullah. I mean, the mullah, he's 80 years old, he's dying, he's frail, he's an ideologue, he's a zealot, he's going to go down with the ship.
Yeah.
But the Ayatollah, right. But the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, the military, and they're not just like an armed forces. They're the entire military-industrial complex of Iran. Where are they in all of this? Because would they be willing to overthrow the Ayatollah? Who would take charge? I think there's a lot of negotiating that is still to be done and still to happen behind the scenes because, the Revolutionary Guard runs things. And you can't just get rid of them. I mean, you got a war in your hands in a country you'd have to occupy. President Trump does not want to make that mistake. On the other hand, he doesn't want to walk away like President Obama always did.
Yeah. It's interesting. The German chancellor has predicted the end of this regime. We can play his words.
If a regime can only hold on to power by force, then it is effectively at its end. I assume that we are now seeing the very last days and weeks of this regime here. It has no legitimacy through elections by the population anyway. The population is now rising up against this regime.
So that's a big statement, obviously, from a major world leader, the German leader. Do you think that's accurate? I mean, do you think there's any way that the regime can suppress and beat these people back into submission after an uprising this large?
I think it's gone too far. And why? This has happened every 5-8 years where the people take to the streets, they object, and they protest against the mullahs, the regime, and it always gets crushed. Why is it different this time? Well, I think the economy is so badly broken, and the protests are all over the country, and they're the rich, the poor, the educated, the peasants, so to speak. So it's the entire country is rising up. I'm watching to see what is the Revolutionary Guard going to do. Are they going to get to the point and saying, okay, we're not zealots. We just want to stay in power. We want to keep our money. We want to keep, we want to keep running things behind the scenes. Are they willing to say, okay, the Ayatollahs, they're the ones who have screwed things up, and are they willing to back out of supporting the Ayatollahs? I just think there's so many more pieces here that we're not seeing, and it's not as simple as people going to the streets, overthrowing the regime, and all of a sudden democracy and harmony break out.
So the Ayatollah and the mullahs are kind of on their own team, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which is basically the military-industrial complex, could just say, you know what, we're going to side with the protesters. We're going to oust all of these, old men, these old Islamic jihadist, psychopathic, theocratic men that have been running this country for the last 45 years. We're going to oust them. We're going to, maybe kill them. Let the mob kill them, and then try to regain control of the country and kind of appease the protesters and side with them and see if that works.
That's one scenario. I just look at what's President Trump doing in Venezuela, which is a lot of the same story. He got rid of Maduro, but he's negotiating with a lot of the people who worked in the Maduro government because he doesn't want chaos. He wants the country to continue to run. I would think, what's President Trump going to do with the Revolutionary Guard? Maybe there's deals to be had there over oil, over Iran and the sanctions. I just think, do not expect President Trump to do the obvious thing or to do the knee-jerk thing. He's playing 5 steps ahead of everybody else. And so I really think that it's not as simple as people are taking to the streets. The Ayatollahs are gone. Somehow democracy breaks out.
You think, I got 10 seconds. You think it's over for the regime? Is this the end?
Yeah.
You think it's
these guys are in their 80s. They're totally incompetent. Yeah, everybody hates them.
Okay. All right. KT McFarland, great stuff. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
An epic flip-flop based, of course, on race. Next.
A new year brings new threats, and Cyberman's ready for every one of them. While hackers plot their next move, Cyberman's already there, protecting families, businesses, and governments before danger can strike. This year, protect what matters most with easy-to-use, award-winning protection. With PCmatic, you get American-made protection that's faster, smarter, and stronger. Start 2026 with confidence. Visit PCmatic.com today.
So,
Here is a before of my stomach before Sonobello, and this is after.
This year, don't just lose weight, lose stubborn fat and sagging extra skin permanently at Sonobello.
I had some loose, wiggly skin, and it is no longer there thanks to Sonobello.
Our expert surgeons use micro laser technology to safely target and remove your diet-resistant fat and tighten loose skin permanently.
I wanted the results of the tummy tuck, but not the downtime. I had a 10 out of 10 experience.
We've helped over 300,000 people transform, and we're proud to be America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
In just one visit, Sonobello got rid of my love handles and my belly fat.
Do you want that flat stomach? You go get that flat stomach.
Call Sonobello.
Get in there for your free consultation. Do this for you.
Schedule your free, no-obligation consultation. Our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today.
Protect your family. Buy LifeVac now.
Thank you, Dad.
That was us over 10 years ago.
Now LifeVac is responsible for saving over 4,000 lives from choking.
In the time it takes you to pick up the phone and call, another life could be saved.
The LifeVac saved my life in 1 to 2 seconds.
Protecting families has always been our mission. I'm sure you love your family like I love my daughter. Do us all a favor and get your own LifeVac now.
Go to lifevac.net or call 877-LifeVac. Order now.
Hi, I'm Sally with sellmypolicy.com, the fast concierge service here to help you sell your life insurance policy for cash now. Our experienced team makes it fast and easy for you to get your offer. We do all the work. Use the money however you want. You can cover healthcare costs, pay off debt, or take the trip of a lifetime. Use the funds for supplemental retirement income, invest in your future or home improvements, or choose to give money to your loved ones now rather than later. John sold his $2 million policy for $590,000 of cash, which he used to pay for the health care he needed. Cheryl sold her $250,000 policy for $50,000 of cash because she did not need the policy anymore and did not want to stress about making premium payments.
If you are over the age of 65 with a life insurance policy of $100,000 of coverage up to $50 million of coverage, then you may qualify.
To get your offer, call 800-330-7355. That's 800-330-7355 or visit sellmypolicy.com.
Why lapse or surrender your policy? Sell it and you can stop making premium payments. You may receive substantially more cash than what your insurance carrier will offer. Plus, you'll get paid fast. Arthur sold his $750,000 policy for $84,000 of cash, which he used to help reduce his debt. SellMyPolicy.com has a large network of funders and eliminates commissions. That means more money in your pocket. There's no cost, no obligation, and no middlemen. Just fast service and great offers.
Fast and free with Sell My Policy.
Talk to a policy expert now. Call 800-330-7355. That's 800-330-7355. Or visit sellmypolicy.com. Sellmypolicy.com.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. We're going to start off with a funny story from the sports world. The Bills, it was a great game, a very tight wild card win over Jacksonville on Sunday, if you watched it. Following that heartbreaking loss, though, Jaguars head coach Liam Cohen taking questions from reporters and praised by a reporter named Lynn Jones from a paper called the Jacksonville Free Press News. The coach was praised by this reporter for his first season on the job as a head coach. Take a listen.
I just want to tell you, congratulations on your success, young man.
Thank you.
You hold your head up, all right? You guys have had a most magnificent season.
Thank you.
And you did a great job out there today.
Appreciate
so you
it.
just hold your head up, okay?
Thank
and
you,
ladies
ma'am.
and gentlemen, Duval, you the one, all
Thank
right?
you, ma'am.
keep it going. We got another season, okay?
I appreciate
Take
it.
care and much continued success to you and the entire team.
Thank you, ma'am.
Kind of a nice moment after a playoff wild card loss at home. Tough loss to deal with. Well, journalist Jamel Hill, formerly ESPN big-time lefty, slammed that reporter on X, posting, "That can't be a reporter, because if so, I would not have used the term awesome." Well, apparently a day later, Jamel Hill all of a sudden changed her tune after she learned that the reporter that she had criticized actually works for a black newspaper, now saying, What I would say to my fellow media members and to the general public is that if we're going to have this much discourse about Jacksonville Free Press reporter Lynn Jones, the very least we could do is follow her publication on social media and subscribe. This is one of the few black newspapers still in existence. So the criticism only goes so far until she finds out that it's her tribe. Because she's so racist, can't criticize that. And that's Jamel Hill. That's a perfect summation of who she is. All right, next up, the Supreme Court hearing oral arguments today. 2 cases on state laws restricting transgender athletes, men competing in women's sports. Biden appointed Ketanji Brown Jackson. Another great day, another mind-boggling moment. Very upset that red states are treating this issue on the basis of biology. Take a listen.
But the law actually operates differently, I think, for cisgender women and transgender women. That is, with respect to their desire to play on a team that matches their gender identity, cisgender women can do it, transgender women cannot.
Cisgender and there's a difference, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole point of the case. Kind of went over her head. A reminder, it's the same Supreme Court justice that can't define exactly what a woman is, or at least couldn't in her confirmation hearings. So we're not exactly sure why she's even ruling on this case. Kind of complicated, right? And finally, Zoran Mamdani is furious at DHS, Homeland Security, for literally doing the basic fundamentals of their job. Detaining an illegal New York City Council employee who had a criminal record as well. Rafael Andres Rubio Bojorquez was detained during an immigration appointment today. Mamdani posting on X that he's outraged. It's an assault on our democracy, on our city, on our values, calling for the immediate release of this man, and he'll continue to monitor the situation. Too bad he doesn't have the power to do any of that. DHS pointing out this employee of the city council is in the U.S. illegally, has been in the U.S. illegally for years, and has an alleged criminal history that includes an arrest for assault. This is fundamental DHS stuff. Adding Bojorquez's visa expired 8 years ago. Yes, these are the people that they're claiming are being victimized by Homeland Security as they demand no immigration laws in this country. All right, another reminder that big government will always, always, always fail you. Next.
This is keratin debris, where nail fungus grows. Nonix Nail Gel cleans out fungus by removing keratin debris. Using Nonix, 90% of nails improve. Get clinically proven results. So effective, it's money-back guaranteed.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Doctors' Preferred Liver Defense is doctor-developed to support your natural detox function with clinically validated, triple-tested key ingredients to energize and renew your liver. Find Liver Defense in the supplement aisle at Walmart. Doctors' Preferred. Better science, better results.
Imagine this banana is a Byrna less lethal launcher, capable of shooting rock-hard kinetic and tear gas mixed with pepper chemical irritants.
The ammo can incapacitate an attacker from 60 feet away without causing death.
This Byrna less lethal launcher is legal in all 50 states. No permits required.
Over 600,000 Byrna pistol launchers have been sold to government agencies, law enforcement agencies, and to private citizens.
Do you want to know what the Byrna less lethal launcher looks like? Visit Byrna.com.
Precise designs, subtle curves,
curated upgrades. Elevated design for thoughtful living. Thuma.
All right, finally tonight, the scale of this fraud story, it just keeps widening, getting worse. Listen to this. In Joe Biden's final year of office, his HUD agency literally lit $84 million on fire just in the state of Minnesota. Department of Housing, Urban Development paid out $84 million in ineligible assistance to the state of Minnesota alone, including $500,000 to dead people. According to the New York Post, audit revealing nearly $500,000 given to 509 tenants who were dead as a part of that $84 million. Additional $246,000 paid to people whose Social Security numbers could not be verified, raising doubts about their eligibility. Rob Finnerty, can you imagine a private company just accidentally giving away $84 million?
In Joe Biden's America, I can. But again, Donald Trump doesn't win November 2024. We don't find out about any of this. Any of it.
Unbelievable.
Thanks, Rob.
Amazing. Good to see you.